All right. Today I have with me Josh Stauffer from Blue Flame Thinking. Josh, I want to say thank you for taking some time today to chat with me about employability skills.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Josh is the president, CEO, owner. I'm not sure which title you've given yourself lately, but owns Blue Flame Thinking, a marketing company here in the Grand Rapids area. So obviously you're going to be involved in a lot of this stuff. So I guess the first question I have for you is, what are some of the struggles that you're facing when it comes to interviewing or hiring young people today?
Yeah. I think supply and demand is a big one. Organizations like this that get sort of in front of that and start introducing kids to the workforce a lot earlier than would typically be there are certainly helpful. But I think one of the biggest challenges we have is the delay between when kids graduate high school and then attempt to enter the workforce as a developer or marketing, right? So they're going to wait till they graduate from college. They might do some internships between there and the college years. But I think the biggest challenge we have is that we have a lot of kids graduating from college that don't have any real world experience or skills, and their expectations are off in terms of them applying for jobs that have a 2 to 4 year experience minimum. College is not experience. And, when employers are asking for that, they're looking for work experience, not college experience.
Right.
And so there's a disconnect there between a lot of people who apply for mid-level jobs with entry-level experience. And there's plenty of entry-level jobs out there for them. So.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing is for our young people today, get your foot in the door, get some internships, get volunteer, get whatever, get out there and get some experience, because that's going to help get your foot in the door. And yes, I think a lot of people lean on the education. Or as one employer I was talking to earlier today, they get their degree, they think they're coming in and they're going to be running the business tomorrow, right?
Yeah, no.
instead of building their way up and learning and gaining some experience. All right. So what types of skills that, as you have, and you and I have talked a lot, and I've always appreciated your responses, just being very candid. What are some of the skills that you find to be lacking, whether it be from people you've interviewed, or should we brought some people on, younger people, and man, it's just like, I don't know where the disconnect was, but they didn't have X, Y, and Z skills.
Yeah, I think the most relevant one right now, based on all of our situations, that's become a lot more important in the last couple of years, is on-camera presence. I see, and I do a lot of these activities with you in the group there too. I see a lot of disengaged, distracted, barely dressed for like a Saturday afternoon sort of presentations of yourself. And I think we're well past the time when the expectation is you're not going to be on camera 80% of the time for your job. We're hybrid. A lot of us are remote. Our clients are all over the country. If you're in a client call, you're on camera. And if you're on camera, that means your background needs to be professional. Your dress needs to be professional. You need to be engaged. It needs to be clear that you're not multitasking or playing a video game or doing something else. You should probably avoid environments where your mom's going to walk behind the sofa and yell at you about dinner being ready, or just whatever it is. And I think that one of the biggest skills we look for with younger kids is the ability to recognize that they're now working in a professional environment, and there's an expectation on an employer and a client's end that you'll present yourself as a professional, regardless of the fact that you're an entry-level employee, right? And that has become really important, like incredibly important in the last couple of years as we all move virtual. So
I'm gonna piggyback off that. Okay. So the high school kid who's doing an internship or the summer hire, like, okay, this kid, well, I get it. They don't get it. Would you say, are you finding that even from some of your college graduates?
Yeah, I would say so. There's a mix, and some of it might be expectations, right? We're a marketing agency, so the expectation is you're probably not going to be in a suit and tie every day, and you're not going to work in a cubicle. And there's the realities of, people working remotely from whatever environment they can make do with at the time, and that, your life circumstances are what they are at any given time. I think there's a lot of grace in those areas. I think what we look for is effort being displayed, right? I've seen a couple of people I've interviewed where, they take the interview call from their bedroom, there's dirty clothes on the floor or something. It's like, you could take a couple of minutes to clean up and just make your environment presentable. My general impression is if you can't even clean your dirty clothes off the floor, you're probably going to do a really poor job with my client work.
Interesting, and maybe you need to use that as one of your analogies. Sometimes going forward, like dirty laundry equals sloppy work. So why would you say that? And when I say young people, this could be high schoolers, college graduates, or just people who've been in the workforce for a year or two, but some reason they're just not getting. Why, in your opinion, do you feel like there is this disconnect between our young people and the expectations of work an employer has?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that lean into that. One is that a lot of employers probably don't think that those expectations need to be communicated, right? They're going to think that that is table stakes and everybody should know that. But for younger people who've never held a professional services job yet, that might not be their understanding of what table stakes are. And so I don't think there's fair work on the employer end being done to correct those things in a constructive manner. The other is that I think our younger kids now spend so much of their time on video, so much of their time in front of a screen. It's really easy to lapse into that comfortable weekend behavior automatically when you're in front of the same device that you're on all the time, right? And so they treat this digital environment a lot like they treat however they would set up their environment to play, online games with their friends. And they failed to make a clear distinction between professional work environment and, a casual medium that they use the same equipment for, and the same desk and the same seat and all those things, right? But there's a clear difference between those two activities that I think, they've had 20, 25 years of treating their virtual environment as a playground instead of a professional working environment.
Oh, wow. No, I had never thought of it like that. And your office spaces, your play spaces, your all that. But beyond that too, I liken it translating the same thing to email, right? Like, or texting. Like some kids are texting in one language. That is never the way that you would send an email professionally. And yet some people do. In the same token, the way in which they handle their work environment, because it's their play space, they don't know how to separate that between that and the professional side.
Yeah.
All right. So give me an example of how you just were some story that you can tell me. Just you were shocked by, like, did this really just happen? Whether a young person, you'd hired them or you interviewed them and just like, did this really just happen? And to your point, at least you had some grace to say that our job is to teach them this, but you just brought them in like, I didn't realize I'd have to teach this.
Yeah. Meeting etiquette is probably a good one. Being on time for stuff. Again, I think it gets back to the general expectations that employers have for a professional service environment. And I think some of us might view those as just like good manners or common sense. And I think it's really easy for employers to be shocked by that or feel like, wow, I didn't realize I was going to have to correct that type of behavior. That should be something that somebody just like wakes up and knows in the morning as a 25-year-old, right? Like, just dress code, showing up on time, not being on multiple devices, apologizing when you're late instead of just rolling in and trying to cover it, things like that,
And that I think maybe that's, I guess, part of the reason why I'm doing this is I don't know where the disconnect is things that employers would say, I just thought that they would know that by the time they're 20 to 25 years old. For whatever reason, it's not happening. And I don't know if it was any different, much different than when you and I were growing up. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah,
probably not, right? Maybe
whatever generation was above us had expectations that we were also not meeting.
Exactly. And that's probably the truth.
Yeah. So yeah. I would say, to piggyback off of that, what's really important for kids to have as a skill is coachability. Like, when you come in, be hungry, ask questions about what you can do better. Don't wait for the employer to follow up with some kind of standard, terrible 30-day review kind of thing. And they're going to bring up a bunch of stuff that you didn't think of. Be proactive. Take that first week, get settled in. Everyone has grace the first week at a new job, right? But take that first week and make sure you're recording all the stuff that you're not sure about or that you think you could do better, and be an active participant in that review discussion. Take ownership over your own professional standards, try to push where you can improve. And part of it, I think, comes down to finding an organization that's open to having that kind of mentoring and that kind of discussion. Not every organization will be, but I think that's a good indication of an organization you should leave.
No, awesome. And that's great. Some great advice for our young people. What if they get a chance to see that, then that's great advice for them to be for them to be taking. All right, I'm going to flip the script. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to add a couple other things that I would say for young people too. I would be encouraged to lean into the changing environment of, job applications, employment, and employer. Don't be afraid to ask to talk to other employees at the organization, right? An employer is going to ask you for 3 references. I mean, as long as it's done in a respectful way, and there's nothing for an employer to hide, I don't think there's any reason for you not to be able to reach out to or talk to 3 employees that are happy with their job. So, yeah.
Interesting. I never thought about it. If they want to hear from you as an interviewee, I want to know about your background and your credentials. Why shouldn't I be able to ask the same of you? Because I want to know if this is the place I want to work at. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, one other thing that you said that we talked about a little bit earlier was, and really maybe only applies to a professional service job, but make sure that your online presence is clean and up to date and, has decent profile pics and things like that. LinkedIn is a good example. I'd say for young first-time professional service kids coming out of college, about 50% of the time they have LinkedIn profiles. We don't even ask for resumes anymore. We just want the link to your LinkedIn profile.
Interesting.
We'll ask for a resume if your LinkedIn profile is clean enough and it shows you put the effort in. But if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, we probably won't even call you back or talk to you.
Wow. That's good. That's good to know. All right. So I'm going to flip the script here. If you could talk to educators for a second, and I believe you have a spouse who's an educator, right? So
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So this might be a little like, we won't let her know that you're saying these things, but you can go ahead and just tell it like it is. If you could speak to educators, what would you tell them to try and convince us of the critical nature of making sure our students are graduating with these skills? Because clearly there's a disconnect between what we're that K-12 environment and even the college university environment to employment. There's a disconnect there. So what would you say to us that we could be doing?
I mean, I would push it in some less than critical conversations. They're the conversations that happen around the edges of employment and employability that I think are the most critical ones, because I mean, either a person has the skills in the background and the drive and the passion to do the job, or they don't. What we find lacking a lot is just general awareness of what it's like to hold a job or expectations for what that job is. And I think that can be cleared up with a lot of what might have, when we were kids, been sort of like guidance counselor conversations around like, hey, what are you interested in doing? Here's what it really looks like. Maybe you should reach out and get an internship or a job shadow or something beforehand. Here's the average salaries. Like, have real expectation conversations with kids about what their job looks like from a work-life balance and a salary balance, to help them understand what they're kind of getting into. Because I mean, frankly, I'm shocked at the number of kids that graduate from college that have never even really actually looked into what the salary range for the jobs they're applying to. They come with expectations that are probably $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 higher than an entry-level position. They're pulling salaries from the East and West Coast, just things that a college graduate might not have even thought about. But heads up, software engineers in California make more than software engineers in Michigan by about $50,000 to $60,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you're looking at averages, they're going to mix it all in. You got to pull your data from the right spots. You got to be, realistic with what you're doing.
No, that's good. Yeah, a little bit of career research for our students, I think would help go a long way.
Yeah.
All right.
And
So
I think you guys do a lot of this too, where, I mean, I would encourage, we've done a number of these. I had a junior in high school, Mark from Lowell, come here and just job shadow me for a week once, and then firmly decided he didn't want to go into marketing. Right? Mm-hmm. Great. Young man just saved himself $30,000 of student debt.
Right. At least.
Go see the real environment before you decide you want to major in something in college, for sure.
And the fact that some of our employers are actually saying, we get that. If they come in job shadows and they find it's not for them, then that's good, because we didn't waste our time hiring somebody who's not a good fit for us.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of our designers come job shadow, they intern in college. Most colleges for some of our professional services require 2 to 3 internships for graduation. That's a little bit outside of what you guys are doing, but I would say, another piece of advice is that don't be shocked if employers understand what the bare minimums you're required to do for your educational certification are. 20 years ago, getting an internship was a good indicator that somebody cared enough to put in extra effort. Today, reaching out for an internship is just a college kid checking the box. They have to do 2 or 3 of them to graduate. So.
So maybe when you're finding the high school kid who's looking for it now, like, okay, hold on, this kid's a go-getter, right? Because he's actually thinking it's more along the lines, this is something I'm exploring. Hey, I'm going to circle back to something you talked about. You talked about the people who want to be there, people who are hungry, just having awareness of expectations. One of the hardest things that I'm hearing too is teaching, this is going off script here, but teaching students this idea of grit. Like, if you really want something, you have to be willing to be a go-getter. You have to pursue something. I think some of our young people expect things to fall into their laps, and it's not a knock on them. That's just somehow that has happened. I think that they thought, if I do this, this, and this, it all works out. Yeah. How do we teach grit to those people? And what does that look like to you when you see that person and you know that they have it?
And I don't know, as a parent, I struggle with this all the time.
Right, same here.
It's hard. I mean, I think that you can teach grit through a practice of instilling within kids that they're going to hear no 10 times before they hear yes, right? I think it's really easy to become negative. Like, you do everything right, you reach out to this group, you really want to work with them or whatever it is, it's the first time you've ever reached out to anybody and the answer is no, right? I get it, because I'm in a sales role. It happens all the time. Like, I hear the word no 50, 60 times a day, a week, on a yearly basis. I'd hate to even add up the number of times I was told no. Expect the same thing. We had a designer here for a while, Alex, who interned with us from college. Our creative director, Adam, told him no 3 times. We didn't have any internship opportunities. It wasn't that we just didn't like his portfolio. We just didn't have any. We told him no 3 times. He showed up in person just to check out the office. Now, that's a little stalkery, so maybe don't always apply that. But after he left, Adam came into my office and was like, this kid just won't take no for an answer. Let's just give him an internship. He's clearly got some perseverance, right? And we'll see how good he is. There were probably 6 or 7 other kids from that same college that just sent one email, got a no, and never reached back out. The kid who got it heard no 4 times, and then he changed our mind, right? And we didn't have a role to give him at that point. So
wow, that's interesting. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, I got a final question here for you. So, regularly hearing from employers, and I've heard this from you too, and I've heard it from others, how important culture is to company nowadays. I think that I'm hearing that more than ever before, as opposed to here's the company line, but really the culture and having the right people and the right fit is so important because of the interactions and what that does for others. So I would say, how would you say the employable skills fit within that? And then also, which is more important than to you, a stronger technical skill background or the employability skills?
Yeah. To the first question, culture is an interesting word left on its own. I think it can be like, when you work at a place that has great culture, you recognize it has great culture. It's usually really hard for people to define exactly what that means to them. It's just a feeling. I also think sometimes people use it as a little bit of a catch-all, and it can be used in a negative way too, right? People they look for culture fit. They get very myopic, and they end up hiring copies of the people they already have because they're worried about expanding and diversifying their workforce. We don't talk as much about culture fit as we talk about someone matching up to our core values, because our culture is built around those core values. And those are, we run on EOS. So our core values are a huge part of our interview process. We talk about them with our candidates. I run through them with them. We explore them in detail. We're looking for people that fit these 4 core values, because we're going to review you based on them. We're going to look at your performance based on them. We'll terminate you based on your performance against those core values, as well as your ability to understand the job, want the job, and have the capacity for the job. Those are the lenses we use to evaluate whether someone is the right fit for our culture, because everyone in our office lines up to our core values and gets it, wants it, and has the capacity for it. That's the culture we build for us. Culture fit is important when you distill it all the way through that, right? We want to make sure that 100% of the people at our agency are the right person in the right seat, and they're the right fit. Doesn't mean they have to come from any of the same backgrounds, culture, any of that stuff.
Sure. All right. So the second part, technical skill versus employability skills.
You know the answer to this. I feel like this is leading the witness. Technical skill can come, right? You could teach people how to place Google ads or get a certification or learn a new thing if they're hungry for it. Employability skills are way more important because you can have people that know the ins and outs of their job, you know, like the back of their hand. They're terrible in a team. They never show up on time. The clients don't like them. It doesn't matter how good you are at your job if you're not employable. And employability comes down to working, for us, comes down to working as a group with our clients collaboratively in a team setting. We don't have any sort of hot rods or jerks or showboat. Like ego is a problem. Ego does tend to show up quite a bit in younger people when they hit the workforce, right? It's that expectation of how great they are and how much they know versus the reality that they don't. And I remember my first job as a software developer, I thought I knew a lot of stuff until my second day when I really got to sit down with a senior developer and he showed me that I was pretty much doing 100% of everything wrong and I didn't know much. And this is a realization that I had, 10 years later, thinking about a mentee relationship with people. I mean, at no point in time did he tell me I was doing anything wrong, but when he showed me how it was really done, I realized that I had no idea what I was doing.
Got it. So I'm going to just share, yes, I knew what the answer, but I just wanted to hear yours because your job did a great job. And you're the one who's always telling me, well, we don't want brilliant jerks working with us. And I use that line all the time. Hey, thank you so much for your time, Josh. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the insights and your willingness to share that with us, our students and our teachers.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully it helps.
All right. Take care.